Hello friends, welcome back to my channel again. Today's video is going to be very exciting one because we are going to talk about some romance. So this video is going to have some romance book recommendation, but if you are looking for Christina Lauren, Emily Henry, those kind of books are not going to take place in this video because I'm not a romance reader and I read only books that have romance as subplot like fantasy, thriller and stuff. I personally don't prefer reading straight out romance books or reading super intimate scenes or anything. I want my romance to be old school and very slow burn and which takes time to bloom and everything. I don't like fast-paced romance. I don't like explicit description of romance. So in this video, it is going to be a very clean and fun and swoon-worthy romance books that you can read if you are looking for something like that. So the first book that I want to talk to you about has my most favorite couple of all time, and I had to start with them because I love them so much. I badly want to ship them together. And I'm talking about Cass and Inej from Six of Crows duology. Basically, the story follows impossible heist, and there comes people who are completely unrelated to each other and they have to perform this heist for a merchant. And these two people, Cass and Inej, they are obviously in love with each other. For some reason, they don't explicitly express those feelings to each other because they have gone through so much and they have seen so much in life. There is something that is holding them back. They don't want to feel happy, or they don't feel like they deserve happiness or something like that. Both of them have gone through so much trauma, and the angst between them is top notch. You will just fall in love with these characters. I was rooting for this character throughout the entire series, and I was so heartbroken about the climax, and I really wanted them to get together. There are so much of beautiful chemistry between them, and it is very subtle, it's very swoon-worthy, and Cass has my entire heart. I highly recommend reading this book. Even if you don't want romance, this is such a great fantasy story. Next is a book that I recently finished, and it is a kind of inspiration for this entire video, and that is Divine Rivals by Rebecca Ross. So Divine Rivals follows Iris Winnow and Roman Kitt. Both are arch nemesis. They are fighting for the same job in a newspaper agency, and they hate each other basically. And this is a classic hate to love story, and it was beautifully done. If you're still not convinced about reading this book, it has magical typewriters, it has letters, it has so much of good things, it has war between gods, and this was such a wonderful time and I loved reading it. I annotated it to my heart's content, and the love between Iris and Roman was so good. They basically love each other through letters, and that is the best form of communication ever. So I still write letters, so I could relate to this book so much. And the love also took time to bloom, and when they finally fell in love, it was so beautiful and so romantic. I could not recommend this enough. Please check this book out. If you want to know more about my thoughts on this book, I have a separate video for this. I'll link it down below if you want to check that out. The next book is one of the most famous book on the internet, and that is written by none other than Sarah J Maas, and the book is A Court of Mist and Fury. This is technically the second book in the series, and the first book is called The Court of Thorn and Roses, but I personally felt that the romance in the second book is much better than the romance in the first book. So in the first book, the story follows Farah. Farah, unknowingly, she kills one of Tamlin's friend. Tamlin is the hero, and Tamlin has to take Farah to his world because she killed the friend of Tamlin. So it is kind of a Beauty and the Beast retelling, and she falls in love with Tamlin, and that is about the first story. In the second story, there comes a character called Rysand, and he has a deal with Farah that she has to spend some time with him. Rysand kind of helps Farah in a very uncomfortable situation, to be said, and they strike a deal between them. She has to spend some time with Rysand, and after she comes to Rysand's land, she learns a lot about Tamlin. She learns a lot about other stuff that Tamlin has not told her, and it is kind of a mess, but eventually Farah and Rysand fall in love. The story, the way they fall in love, the way the love blooms between them, it is really top notch. That is one of the best aspect of the story, the romance, and I loved it so much. The next book is another one of my recent read, and I fell head over heels in love with this book. The writing, the world building, and it was all very good. The romance, everything was very, very nice. And I'm talking about Brandon Sanderson's The Warbreaker. I know I finished this book. I was super intimidated by this book, but finally I got to it, and I'm so glad that I did. This was such a wonderful read. This is the first time I'm reading Brandon Sanderson. I loved it so much, and you can literally see it in my face that how much I loved it. So this story follows two sisters, Siri and Viviana, and Siri is getting married to the god king of a faraway kingdom, and Viviana is supposed to take her place actually, but Siri has been pawned in her place, and Siri has to take care of her own kingdom, stop the war, marry the god king who is kind of monstrous, everyone says so. But when they finally get married and when they get to know each other, the love story between Siri and the god king was so good. I loved it so much. It has multiple POVs, it has multiple characters. There was one character called Light Song. I loved that character so much. I was so heartbroken with his ending, but I was so much in love with that character. If he had a love story in this book, I would have given everything to read it. But nonetheless, God Kings and Siri's love story was more than enough for me to have a very good time. Please check this out. It was such a beautiful book. This book might be the only book that is straight out love story, and that is One True Loves by Taylor Jenkins Reid. So this story follows Emma Blair, and she's married to Jesse. That is a love marriage, and they spend so many years together. And one day in a helicopter accident, Jesse is presumed to be dead, and she is devastated by that. And she spends 2 years to move on. She grieves for him. Everything is done. After 2 years, she meets a man, her school friend Sam, and falls in love with him and gets engaged. By now, Jesse returns back. So this is a dilemma for Emma, whether to move on and go on with the life that she's already having, or whether to get back to the older one which she thought was lost. So this story is made into a movie too that was very wonderful to watch. And as you know, Taylor Jenkins Reid's writing is so good. She will just take you through all the emotions. You don't have to do anything, just relax and read this book. It was very fun time to read for me. And I could see from Emma's perspective how it was hard to get stretched on either sides. She could not choose anyone, and both of them are really good people, and it was making it very hard. I hope you love this story. I highly recommend this. This is a very light-hearted read, unlike all the other books I have recommended. It is all high fantasy and stuff. This is a very chill, light-hearted summer read. The next book is again a romantasy book, and I don't have the physical copy. I read it in Kindle, and the book is These Violent Delights. This story is written by Chloe Gong, and it is set in 1920s Shanghai. This is a kind of retelling of Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet, and the hero and heroine's name in this book are Juliet and Roma. Like in the Romeo Juliet, they both are from rivalry families, and they are having a kind of gang war between those. Both are drug dealers, I think, and it is very weird, and it has a tinge of fantasy also in it. The kind of setting that the author has done for the book in 1920s Shanghai was really very refreshing and unique and fresh for me. The love story between them was also very good. They initially loved each other, and due to some reasons they hate each other, and now again they have to love each other. It's kind of a love hate to love relationship. It was very nice. Both the books were really very good. I devoured it in a single day, and I think I read it for an Instagram book club. So we all enjoyed that, and it was very good time. The next story is the only story in this entire pile that is very tragic, heart-wrenching love story. That is The Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller. This is basically a Greek mythology retelling of the Trojan War. The most prominent feature of this book is the love between Patroclus and Achilles. If you don't know who Patroclus and Achilles are, it's kind of hard to explain it. Achilles is a warrior, and he's kind of a super warrior. No one can defeat him in war. So he's been asked to fight for the Trojans, and Patroclus is kind of a little prince. He's been sent by his kingdom to serve Achilles, and they both fall in love. And this kind of love is really very unique. And Madeline Miller, oh my god, she is such a queen of writing. She has tied me down while reading this book. Not only this, the Cersei also, she has done a very good job in writing. I badly want to read another book from her, but she's taking forever to release the next book. I think she's writing one on Persephone. So this book, the love, it's the angst, the pining, everything was so good. I could literally feel the love Patroclus has for Achilles, and Patroclus has the purest soul of all time, and he needs to be preserved and he needs to be safeguarded, he needs to be protected. Somehow, Achilles fails in that, and the rage of what is the Trojan Wars ending. So, if you are interested in learning about Greek mythology, also a little bit of romance, this book is the perfect one for you. This entire list of recommendation will not be complete without this book, and that is Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. This is a gem. If you haven't read any classic, if you haven't read any Jane Austen books, I highly recommend you to check this Pride and Prejudice. This has various adaptations of movies, TV shows, and everything. And you can just read this book and watch 2004's adaptation of this book. It is such a masterpiece. And this book will give you all the butterflies that you need when you read a romance book. So basically, the story follows Elizabeth Bennet and Mr. Darcy. Mr. Darcy is kind of a wealthy man. Darcy is kind of proud, and Elizabeth is kind of prejudiced, and they both meet each other. There is a lot of misunderstanding, there is hate, there is love, and it is all such a wonderful time. The beautiful explanation of the landscape and everything is really the perks of reading a Jane Austen book. Jane Austen books are really great. They reflect the society's thought process during that time. And it is not just romance, it has a lot of aspects to it. I loved the romance between Lizzie and Mr. Darcy, and I also loved the romance between Lizzie's elder sister, whose name I'm forgetting, but that storyline was also really good, and they have a beautiful romance too. The next book is written by a Japanese author, and I feel like Japanese writers do the maximum justice to human emotions. So when it comes to love, no one can explain love more than them. And this story is about loneliness and love that defies ages. I'm talking about Strange Weather in Tokyo by Hiromi Kawagami. This story follows Sukiko. She's 38 years old, and she's one day meeting her former school teacher, Sensei, and he's around 75 or something. So this is a kind of unconventional story of two people with huge age gap meeting each other and falling in love. You will feel the completeness of love in this book. That is how I felt after reading this. Their love story had everything that you can ask for in a romance book, and it was very, very realistic. It did not have any cheesy content. It had very realistic approach towards love. It's basically mundane things that they do together and fall in love through that, which was my favorite kind of reading romance. It was not dramatic. It was very, very plain and simple and hard hitting. I loved the story very much. The last book that I want to talk to you about is about love that blooms during the war. The book is As Long as Lemon Tree Grows by Zoulfa katouh. So this story is set in Syrian Revolution time, and there is war going on, and we follow Salama, the lead character. She's 19 years old, and she's actually a pharmacist, but she's working as a surgeon in hospital because of lack of doctors in hospitals. There is a huge number of people, wounded people coming to hospital, but no one is to treat them. So they are trying to get all the hands on the desk. So Salama is forced to do a lot of stuff that she's not capable of. And unfortunately, she has already lost her parents, her brother, everyone for a bombing. And her brother's wife is what she's left with. Her name is Laila, and she's carrying a child. So she has to take care of her, and they have to smuggle themselves out of Syria to live a better life. Meanwhile, she meets a guy called Kenan, and he has three siblings, very, very young siblings, and he has to take care of them. But Kenan doesn't want to leave the country, so he meets Salama, they fall in love, and he tries to leave these kids with Salama and get them out of the country. But she is very hellbound to go along with him, not to leave him behind, and that is the story is about. It is a hard hitting, it has a lot of trigger warning, it has PTSD, it has hallucinations. It is really hard to read, not in the sense of the language, but sense of the content. It is really, really very hard to digest what happens in this book, but this is such a beautiful story and it has to be said, it has to be read, it has to be digested, it has to be spoken about, I feel. And that love during those hard times was the best of all. And it makes us feel that why we love someone. It makes everything better. It makes everything so beautiful around us, even though everything is going chaos around us. So this is one of the best romance that I ever read in any of the books. So I highly recommend you to check this out. If not only for the war, if not only for the political aspect, read for the romance. So that is pretty much it, guys. These are all the books that I loved and enjoyed reading about the romances. And as always, if you have any recommendations for me, please do leave all those things in the comment. And I want you to recommend me books of romance that has as a subplot, not the main romance, because I am really very poor at reading romance books. But I kind of like these kind of books that I've recommended today. So leave all those kind of recommendations to me. Let me know about the romance books that you have read, and I would love to chat with you all in the comment section. So that is pretty much it, guys. Until I see you again in the very next video of a bookish content, keep reading. This is Sushmita signing off.